Hello, hello, hello. It's your man Ethan the Truth back again. I hope everybody had a wonderful start to their week so far. All right. So, you know how I like to do it. Let's just go ahead and get right into it. This is going to be a three-part series that I'm going to give you, and it is entitled Three Worlds, and this is going to be part one. I don't have any definitions to get into. I'm simply giving you some of my views, some of my opinions, and some of my thoughts on certain subjects. And as always, I would love to hear your feedback. So make sure you drop me a message on here, or you can always go to my Instagram at Ethan the Truth. Make sure you follow my Twitter at Ethan the Truth and my YouTube page at Ethan the Truth. If you want to email me, you can use Ethan the Truth at Gmail to send me a message there as well. As always, I would love to hear your feedback, thoughts, and views on some of the subjects that I discuss. So, I know what you're thinking. What is this guy talking about? Three worlds. Well, obviously, we're all on one earth, but there are three different worlds, in my opinion, in my view, that operate on this one earth. That's going to be the world of the rich, the world of the poor, and the world of the middle class. So today, I'm going to talk to you about the world of the middle class from my viewpoint. In my opinion, I feel like the middle class, they have a lot of opportunities that will present themselves due to jobs, education, and just the opportunities that come between those two things. So let me dig into that a little bit. Usually middle class, they come from a home where there are some provisions there, or two parents in the home. Either way, they usually have a warm bed to sleep in, food to eat, decent education. They have a provision to get to school, whether it's a school bus or their parents dropping them off or what have you. When it comes to job opportunities, those are usually there, where they usually have a way to find a job. They usually are able to start working when they're in high school, and then they either work their way up sometimes with those jobs, or it gives them the experience to make it to a different job as they get older in life. And then also with that education piece, they usually have the opportunity to either get a scholarship or to further their education, whether it's in a trade school or something like that when they're in. That's why I say the middle class usually has lots of or I wouldn't even say lots of opportunities, but they do have some opportunities that are usually available to them to make some decisions as far as where they want to go in the job market, and as far as how they want to go with education, whether it be a scholarship, or let's just say there's someone around that sees that they have some gift or some ability and they believe in them. And that person is usually, could be someone at the school, or it could be someone that their family knows. And this person will also usually help them get to where they would need to find other opportunities in life, whether it's through jobs or education as well. So in the middle class, there's usually opportunities available to go in different avenues. Usually also with the middle class, a youth in the middle class is able to see how they're just a few steps away from a better lifestyle. They can usually see either whether someone related to them or someone that their family is friends with, that either has a lifestyle that may be slightly above the lifestyle that they live or slightly above the lifestyle that they live. They're usually able to see that and see how it's a few steps away from where their current middle class lifestyle is. And when they can see these things, it usually gives them a greater appreciation for the things that are earned. They tend to learn the value of a dollar. So when they start working, They see that even though they're in a middle class home, there are bills. There are incidental things to life that pop up. And because these things happen, they learn that the value of that dollar is, yeah, it's there, but it may have to go towards something else. Things that may have been planned may have to get canceled. And so when they start working, from seeing this usually through their parents, they learn the value of that dollar a lot quicker than one may get if it's just handed to them, or, even as a child, when your parents just give you an allowance or give you money and you don't really understand the earning value of it. So they usually also learn really quick how close they are to being poor. Because, when you're middle class, usually your parent or parents are still living somewhat paycheck to paycheck. They may have, like I said, decent provision for you for, clothing, food, education, transportation, but it's usually not a bulk amount of surplus that's sitting there ready to be used. So they quickly learn usually how close they actually are as they get older to being in the category of poor. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about growing up poor. I'm not going to touch on the entire subject of poor because that's going to be for another episode, but I'm going to talk to you a little bit about growing up poor because that's something that I know about. I grew up poor. I grew up on the south side of Chicago in a housing project. Stairwells were pissy, elevators were pissy, graffiti everywhere. Elevators were broken. We had to walk up 5-8 flights of stairs. It's usually lights are busted out in the hallway, so it's dark. You can't see anything. You're stepping on piss. And the thing about it is when you grow up that way, you really don't know any better. You think that that's acceptable lifestyle because it's the way that you live. You don't really know that things should be different, especially when you're young. As you get older, you understand that life should be a little bit different. But, that's how I grew up. I grew up in a single parent household. My mom did the best she could. And she actually worked her way from us growing up poor to becoming middle class. So I was able to learn from her example. My mom spent time working, and then she also went to night school as well. So she set a good example for my sister and I, as far as, even though we grew up poor, she showed us the ropes, if you'd have it, to working your way out of that situation and working our way to becoming middle class. So I think, when I reflect on it, I still think about the disadvantage that, you have when you do grow up poor. When I was about 8 years old, I remember walking to school and I saw a man get shot. And, all my mom could do was cover my eyes. And she still took us to school, my sister and I. It wasn't like just because we saw someone get shot, we didn't have to go to school. She still took us to school. I can still remember the bullets whizzing by. It was when I think about it now, I never had nightmares about it, even as a kid, because when you grow up around things like that, you get used to it. But when I think about it now, I reflect on it and I understand just how disadvantaged that situation is for anyone that has to grow up in that situation. Because it's not like it was just me. I mean, you're talking about thousands, even millions of people that experience that kind of a lifestyle. And it's no fault to your parents. My mom, she was, she lost her mother when she was 12. So my mom did the best she could from that point on. My mom also, grew up in the projects as well and had to put herself through school herself. So, with that being said, she did a great job as far as working her way up out of the situation she was in and working, instilling values and things into my sister and I so that we could have a better lifestyle and a better future. But, it comes to the simple point of when you're in that situation, you have to think to yourself, what am I going to do about it? You know, how am I going to change the situation that I'm in? Because the fact that there are three different options means that there's another option for you. Now, obviously, if you're middle class, you don't want to become poor. And, you know, you may want to become rich, but it may not even necessarily be about becoming rich. Maybe it's just about making sure that you can maintain and have some surplus. You know, when you talk about middle class, there's still categories within categories. You know, you could say lower middle class, you could say upper middle class. So you have to kind of decide and look at where you're at and think of where you want to be in life as well. One thing I can tell you is growing up the way that I did, I never, you know, although I appreciated the things that I learned and the things that I experienced, I never wanted my kids to live in a situation like that ever. You know, I wanted my kids to have the best advantages possible that they could have in life. You know, I never wanted them to experience things that would be traumatic to them, you know, as a child, especially because of the living conditions that they would be in. I can remember another incident I'll tell you about when I was about 10. My mom and my sister and I were on the bus in Chicago, and we were coming back from a religious event that we had attended. And we were coming back, and a man on the back of the Chicago bus, you could pull this cord back in the day, and it would stop the bus and pop the doors open. And the guy did that and snatched my mom's purse. So I remember jumping up and trying to chase them, you know, get off the bus with the man. And my mom, of course, grabbed me and stopped me because I was just a 10-year-old kid. And, you know, I cried. I remember crying, having that knot in my throat. And the thing about it is a bunch of people started clapping on the bus, and my mom, you know, even laughed a little bit, and she was like, "Oh, it's okay. It's okay." You know, she's like, "I still have my wallet." And she showed me that, you know, she still had her wallet that had her food stamp card and the bus card and stuff in it. So really all the man got was my mom's religious books. So who knows, maybe that helped him. But the reason I'm sharing this story with you is because at the age of 10, when that happened, every time we rode the bus, I was in fear that something like that was going to happen to my mom, and there would be nothing that I could do about it. The other thing that did to me at the age of 10 years old is it upset me because I felt like my mom was this good religious Christian. And I thought to myself, coming back from this religious event, you know, my mom's entire life dedicated to God, why would he let a man snatch her purse? Now, I'm going to stop right there because as an adult, I understand that whether you're in either one of those three worlds, rich, poor, middle class, upper middle class, lower middle class, poor, homeless, rich, wealthy, whatever, bad things in life can just happen. But I'm just talking to you from the standpoint of a 10-year-old. Those were my thoughts at that point, not my thoughts now as a grown man, where I understand, you know, sometimes in life things just happen. It has nothing to do with God necessarily. Sometimes things just happen to people in life, and that's just how life goes. But at 10 years old, I didn't know that. And I'm thinking to myself, man, we're coming back from this religious event. My mom just got her purse snatched. You know, where was God? Why wasn't he looking out? And then, you know, every time we got on the bus, I never said it to my mom. Every time we got on the bus, I was terrified that something like that was going to happen. And I'm sharing that with you because, you know, sometimes when you think about how things go on from generation to generation, it may not necessarily always be our fault. I'm going to make that clear. But sometimes generational disadvantages occur where you see family generations sit in one spot, and it just kind of, the cycle of life repeats itself. Now, I had a great mom who worked hard, night school, and got us, you know, to middle class at a certain point in life. But, you know, my younger life to young adult, I grew up poor in a housing project. And so there was a lot of things that, you know, I witnessed and worried about as a child that I never wanted my children to ever have to worry about. And so I think as a parent, you always have to evaluate where you're at and think about the life that you're providing for your child, if you have one, and what their future will be like. When I was between 15 and 20 years of age, still on the south side of Chicago, I mean, I couldn't tell you how many of my friends that were killed. I have friends that were shot when I was there. I have friends that were murdered when I was there. I was around drive-by shootings where I had to hide one time, and I thought for sure, because I could see the shooter's feet, he was going to see me hiding inside of a pillar in a playground, but he never looked in there. Those are the type of things that I'm sharing with you because as a parent, I can tell you right now, I never wanted my children to experience that type of a lifestyle. Now, those are also the thoughts of a man between the age of 15 and 20 years old. You could be eating at a restaurant. You could be in a movie theater. You could be in a school in a good area. And guess what? Violence could still occur. So I'm not saying that just because you move your child from one class to another in a lifestyle that's going to protect them from being in harm's way, because that's not necessarily true. I realize that now as an adult, but the thoughts of a younger man, I just realized that there were certain situations that if I could prevent putting my children in that, and even as an adult, I definitely didn't want my children around that type of a lifestyle. On the lifestyle of the poor, because that's going to be for another episode, but I am going to tell you this. When you grow up poor, and I'm sharing this because I grew up poor, I consider myself to be my life, not even upper middle class, just middle class. But when you grow up poor, like I did, you also have the equal disadvantage of not being around and interacting with people of other races and cultures. Now, the reason I bring that up is it's usually to no person's fault of their own. But when you're poor, city zoning puts kids in certain schools, which means that they're going to interact in certain areas of life. And also the lack of the means of transportation usually will prevent you from being able to get to other areas to possibly go to another school or even be in different areas close to where you live. So you're usually pretty much stuck where you live at. Now, that has to do with anyone that's poor. I'm not talking about just because I was a black man growing up poor in a housing project on the south side of Chicago the first 20 years of my life. I'm talking about in general. If you're poor and you live amongst those circumstances, that's pretty much how it's going to be. Now, let me touch on why I personally consider it to be a disadvantage. These are my thoughts. These are my opinions. These are not facts. When you grow up and you only learn how to interact with certain people that live a certain lifestyle in a certain culture, usually, it is hard to learn how to live and operate in the rest of the world that we live in, because there are different cultures, there are different societies, and there are different classes of life. I'm not saying that you can't do it, but it does make it difficult to do that sometime. Yeah, I'm on, Brew. Hopefully you can hear me, man. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but I do believe that it definitely makes it tougher. Okay. I also share the fact of when I talked about transportation, the first, maybe the first half of my life, we didn't always have a car. So that meant we had to take the bus to get groceries. It's things like that may not seem like a big deal, but they play a part into a child's psyche and mind. And that's another one of those things where I thought to myself, I don't ever want that lifestyle for my children if I can prevent it. Now, this is no bash against my mom. My mom did a wonderful job. I couldn't be the man speaking before you today if I didn't have my mom to teach me the things that she taught me in life. Let me make that very clear. I'm simply talking about the fact that if you have the means to make things different and better for the next generation, following your bloodline, you would certainly want to give it some thought about how you could do that. Okay? That's simply all I'm saying, because even if you're in a good situation, how can I make it a better situation? How can I make it a great situation for the next generation following my bloodline? Okay? So I touched on, the middle class, jobs, education, opportunities, what it's like to live and grow up poor, because that's something that I personally experienced. And I know what it's like to come out of that situation as well, thankfully, due to my mom's hard work with working and going to night school all those years to bring us out of that. So here are some questions that I would say would be a good way to look at this situation and think about how you would want the next generation of your bloodline and so forth as it continues. Where do you want your life to be? So, is your life where you want it to be? Are there things you could change and make better? Are you comfortable, or can you just make things different in some type of capacity going forward? Do you have life insurance? Things like that. I mean, they're simple questions that we could all ask ourselves, but a long way for our own future and our future generations. The next question I would propose would be your kids' lives. Where are your kids' lives now compared to yours? Is it better? Do you see history possibly repeating itself? Have you had conversations with your children about how you want their life to be better? Have you had conversations with your children about how your life was? Have you had conversations with your children about their kids' lives possibly? Like I said, these are just simple questions that are at least worth giving some thought to, in my personal opinion. Have you thought about your grandkids, if you have some, or if you may have some in the future? What do you think, if you had to envision in your mind what that bloodline would carry down as far as the livelihood of the family? Something like an insurance policy on yourself could go a long way if it's, it's going to come someday, because we're all going to pass away someday. So someday that life insurance is going to cash in. If it gets used properly and invested properly, could it further the bloodline for your family generations to come down to your grandkids? I mean, it's just simple questions to think about and analyze and look at in your life. And then, a question that I often try to ask myself, and sometimes I'm not happy with the answer, I'll be honest with you. Am I being great? Am I making great decisions? Am I being great in this aspect? Am I being great in that aspect of my life? Am I showing my children that I'm doing something that's great? Or am I simply just going through the motions and just kind of coasting? So simple questions, things that I personally feel could be beneficial for all of us to look at, ponder, and think about. And also, what class of lifestyle do you feel you're currently living? And be honest with yourself. Do you feel like you're living poor? Do you feel like you're middle class, lower middle class, upper middle class? Do you feel like you're rich? Do you feel like you're wealthy? But at least out of those three categories, rich, poor, middle class, be honest with yourself. Ask yourself, where do you see your life right now? Which class do you feel you're living in? And just see what you come up with and see if you can make some improvement to it. I mean, I feel personally we can always have room for self-improvement. So just ask yourself those questions and see if there's a way that you can improve at some point in your life. Okay. So let me say thank you to everyone that tuned in. I see a lot of people tuned in. I really appreciate you listening. Please give me your feedback. Let me know what your thoughts are. You can always shoot me DM on Instagram under Ethan the Truth. You can hit my Twitter as Ethan the Truth. You can reach me at my email at my Gmail account, which is Ethan the Truth at Gmail. And my YouTube page as well, which is Ethan the Truth. So I appreciate you tuning into this content. I would sum it up with saying, at least ask yourself the question every day, am I being great?